Hello, I'm Brigantia Blackbird of the Blackbird Grimoire. Welcome back to Pagan Tales. Today we are discussing the goddess Aine. She is considered to be a goddess of the sun, the moon, summer, fertility, cattle, agriculture, wealth, etc., etc., etc. She's a very ancient goddess who has been worshipped under many names and faces for a variety of reasons, so she has a broad range of associations. Some of her titles are Queen of the Fae, hence why we are talking about her in April. Because during the month of April, I do feel just a sense that the Fae are starting to become more active. They're about to go on their trooping in preparation for Beltane. Everything's just waking up and getting started. Another title of Aine is, of course, Lady of the Lake. Her father was called Egobale. She has several possible siblings, including Eileen and or Fenin and Grenane. She has one child that is described as being the magician. This could possibly be Merlin himself, the original version. And this, of course, was by her union or by her ravishment by Gerald, Earl of Desmond. Again, this was possibly a conception by force, possibly a negotiated thing. Things tend to vary depending upon who's telling the tale. Now, her husband is generally referred to as Manan mac Lir, at least according to a lot of folklore. However, Manan mac Lir was also the husband of the goddess Rhiannon, so we'll be touching upon that in a moment. So, all this brings up, who is Aine really? We've talked a little bit about her titles, first being Queen of the Fae. This is a title that is being applied to many goddesses that are within the British Isles, and that raises a lot of identity questions. Is this Queen of the Fae in particular area? It was this a Queen of the Fae for one era of history over another? Is it something that comes and goes? What exactly does it mean to be Queen of the Fae? How broad it is it? Are we referring to the same deity or many? There are questions, and there's legitimate reasons for these questions. The other title being the Lady of the Lake. Well, the Lady of the Lake, of course, we know from Arthurian legend, is the ruler of Avalon. So have there been many ladies of the lake? Do they come and go, each taking their turn in this particular office? Is the Lady of the Lake all of the same being? We don't know for sure. There's a reason why this continues to be hotly debated. And as far as being the wife of Manan mac Lir, as mentioned a moment ago, he was also the husband of the goddess Rhiannon. So are we looking at multiple marriages, or is Aine the proper name for Rhiannon? Because Rhiannon, if you'll remember from other videos, if you've watched them, Rhiannon is essentially means great queen, which whenever you see great queen, that is generally to be considered to be a title, a regional title, as opposed to being a proper name. So are Aine and Rhiannon the same being? Are there multiple incarnations of this goddess? All of this ambiguity leaves room for a great deal of interpretation, which is why I tend to get out my painkillers when I examine the family trees and identities of Celtic deities. So, as regards being the mother of Merlin, if Aine is indeed the mother of Merlin, who is the magician of ancient Britain, that is another direct tie to bring her into Arthurian legend. And if she is said in this context to also be the maternal ancestress of several Irish families in particular. And anyone who's associated with Merlin or Avalon or the Fae in general, there are many families throughout the British Isles, not just Ireland, but also Scotland and Wales and England that are said to be, of the magical bloodlines. So if this is Aine, at least in one particular case, that means that there's a reason for some sources to consider her to be the source point, the origin of mixing Fae and human bloodlines. Now, does this also make her the mother of witches? Because one theory is about the origin of witches suggests that there has been that the people who can practice the craft, the people who do have this magic in their blood, that it is the result of a blending of divine and human blood, or fae and human blood. Which, if the fae are part of the divine, perhaps a lower tier, or perhaps what we refer to as the fae were once considered to be gods, but of course, with the conversion and the church influence, they were relegated to this lower position, not occupying a lower position in actuality, but just in perception. But either way, if either scenario is true, then Aine could be considered to be the ultimate matriarch of witches and wizards who are of specifically Celtic descent. And this goes into the argument, are witches born? Are they made? This is something that is a bit kind of a testy argument among some circles of witchcraft. I think we've mostly all settled into our various camps, but every so often the argument does get reinvigorated, and perhaps the point of view of that a witch is someone who they have these capabilities innately, and it's just a question of them being trained up in it, which is my own personal position. That might be the result of fae or divine ancestry. That might be the reason why some of us say, yeah, if you learn the techniques and you actually can move the energy around, then yes, this is innate, and so we can say that witches are essentially born, and none of us are cut off from source. We don't have to go through some kind of rigmarole procedure in order to wield these energies. It's just a question of us consciously harnessing what we already possess. And then, that divide with people say, oh no, you must go through these initiations, and so you have to go through this convoluted procedure to rip open your chakras, and things have to be infused into you. You don't have it within. You can study the theory, but you can't actually practice until you go through this, yada, yada, yada. Maybe the people who genuinely feel this way, because I think some of them, they do honestly hold that as their opinion, that could be an indication of a fully human bloodline that was never mixed in with the gods or with the fae, and so perhaps they actually do have to have that inserted into them. So, there's my little grenade that I tossed off into the distance. So we'll see how that one lands in the comments, I suppose. I know, I mean, it's Monday, it's April Fool's Day. It's the first thing in the morning. Oh, and I'm choosing violence. Oh dear. We'll see how that goes. But let's move on. Let's talk about some of the correspondences with the goddess Aine. And with the solar system, she's associated, of course, with both the sun and the moon. The moon phase, specifically the waxing phase, whenever things are growing. And that also has to do with the fact that she's associated more so with the light half of the year, the growing half of the year. She's associated with the element of fire. Some people consider also sources, although I do see fire mentioned more regularly. Which, again, typo, my God. I need an editor, guys. I need an editor to see the things that I obviously don't see when I'm working on preparing these presentations. But Anya is associated with a lot of colors, but specifically brown and silver. Brown being of the soil, the silver also having to do with the moonlight or light in general. She's tied to the celebrations of both Letha or Midsummer and Lunasa, specifically the number 9. And the plants gorse, meadowsweet, and moonwort, but also any plant that's known to have some associations with the fae. This is something that I think there's a legitimate link to Anya too. With cattle, animals rather, she's linked with cattle, but also horses, specifically a red mare. She's said to be able to change into a red mare and take on that form. Mythical beings, of course, the fae, which we've already gone into. And she's said to have the powers of providing abundance, affection, agriculture, the protection of animals, banishments, desire, fertility, healing, honor, justice, love, magic in general, but also fairy magic, moon magic, solar magic, provider of prosperity, protection, specifically of women, romance, and shapeshifting, specifically because of her ability to shapeshift into a red mare as she chooses. So, if you're going to be working with Anya, you might consider offerings of milk, honey, jewelry, crystals, eggs, red or gold candles, ritual cleansings, harp music, seasonal wildflowers, poetry in her honor, song, things of that sort. And the only thing I'm going to leave you with today is the question of: do you feel a call to Anya? If you do, will you answer that call? Will you explore where that relationship could take you, and deal with all of the the difficulties of trying to discover exactly who this goddess is and who she isn't, and, and everything tied up with that. Will you take on that challenge? That's a question for you to answer, of course. And I thank you for listening to me through the entirety of the video, and just hearing a little bit about this goddess who does have a link with the Fae. Next week, we're going to be talking about the goddess Bab. So we'll be looking at a slightly less sweet and cuddly aspect of the Fae. You know, all of the goddesses that I'm going to be talking to you in this series for the month of April all have strong links with the Fae, or specifically carry the title of Queen of the Fae. So it's going to be all very convoluted and complicated. So I hope you enjoy it. And again, of course, come back next week to talk about Bab, and leave your own reactions to this in the comment section, or send me an email at brigantiablackbird@protonmail.com, and we'll just have a good old chinwag there. But I think that'll do it for now, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.